Hello, thank you so much for joining us today. This is Elizabeth, and she's a nutritionist and a liver detox coach. You do that predominantly on Instagram, I believe, and help people with their liver flushing, which has transformed your health. And so you're going to share about your story today, which is amazing. Thank you so much. So if you could just maybe just introduce a bit about you and what you do, and how you sort of got into this sort of
Sure.
area.
Well, firstly, thank you so much for inviting me. I'm thrilled to be here. So yes, I work mainly on Instagram at the moment, although I am supposed to be launching a website at some point, just haven't quite got around to it. But yeah, I trained many years ago as a conventional nutritionist. And actually probably in 2009, I think I completed my diploma, and I kind of worked in a very conventional sense at first. And I was really struggling with my own health at the time. So without wanting to jump around, too much, I had quite I would say, long and severe history of multiple kind of health conditions, going back to probably when I was a young child. So we're talking, sort of over 40 years, probably. I'd had these health issues. And I didn't really know anything about liver flushing. I'd come across it. Maybe there was this website called CureZone back in the late 90s, early 2000s, and really before the kind of advent of social media and Facebook. That was where I got most of my alternative health advice. And I loved being a nutritionist, but I don't think I had a mission in the way that I do now. And to be honest, I hadn't transformed my own health. So I was struggling really to communicate and how to help, other people. So, and I think, having had these health problems from being a small child, I was always looking for answers. And it was really a chance remark on a CureZone post about Candida. So Candida had been kind of one of my main health issues from very, very young. And I'd been to see, lots and lots of doctors, both mainstream and alternative, over the years, been to clinics, been to specialists. And I was on a low carb diet, a Candida diet, as I'm sure many, of your sort of your kind of the people on your programs probably are familiar, and really just was struggling. And so it was a chance remark on a CureZone post that someone mentioned liver flushing. And I did 3 liver flushes back in gosh, it would be probably around 2008. And I got no stones. And I did 3 and just got nothing out. And so thought, oh, well, I don't think I have stones then, because obviously, at that
Yeah.
stage, I didn't really understand the mechanism. I thought maybe just some people had stones and maybe that wasn't my problem after all. And so then I abandoned it, didn't think any more of it, trained to be a naturopath, a nutritionist in 2008, 2009. And my teacher was very much against liver flushing and kind of, I suppose, subscribed to the idea that it's, just drinking,
Oh,
it's olive oil and grapefruit juice
yeah.
all mixed up into balls. And so I thought, oh, well, I had a lucky escape. But something just kept kind of nagging me in the back of my mind. And I just started to read more about detoxification. I was still on CureZone. And yeah, I just thought, okay, maybe I need to try one more time. And I prepped for,
Really?
yeah,
So after all that, you were so drawn to it, had no results. You were
yeah,
training and your teachers were telling you it's nothing.
yeah,
And I guess because of these people on CureZone sharing, were they
yeah,
sharing sort of their transformational stories?
yes,
And you were thinking,
yeah,
yeah, okay,
yeah.
yeah,
I place a lot of store, I think, even now, or especially now, on anecdotal and, people's real lived experience.
yeah.
And I listen to that. And that's,
Versus where's the study?
yes,
Because it's kind of, oh
exactly.
no, you can't trust that. Trust the study. Well, actually,
Yeah,
there's arguably more fabrication that can be done on studies than
Yes,
someone standing there saying, this is what happened to me, especially when the numbers start increasing and you have these
this is it.
large, people in the thousands and the millions, if not, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely, I'm
And
with you on that.
people have got nothing to gain from sharing their personal experience other than helping other people. So it's an
Yeah.
altruistic, gesture, isn't it? And so
Hmm.
yeah, I just felt very drawn to it. And then I prepped again and did a prep for 10 days really, really thoroughly. And I remember the next morning after that flush then being very different and waking up and seeing these stones. And then I felt this very significant shift in my symptoms that nothing else had touched for, a long time, decades. And that was a real revelation then. And I was like, wow, okay, this is real.
So what sort of symptoms were you experiencing, if you don't mind sharing? I'm just
No,
imagining people listening, they can probably really resonate if if you
yeah.
were struggling with the sort of symptoms they have today and they're hoping maybe liver flush is the answer for them.
So I would say, as is often the case for people, it usually starts in the gut. So I had constipation from a very young age. And I was eating all the usual sort of foods that you ate in the 80s. In the 80s, it was very much, wow, there's all this amazing convenience food now that people were starting to buy and consume in a way that they hadn't done probably the previous decade so much. So yeah, it was a lot of gluten. And I was always bloated. And then as I got older and became a teenager, and of course started to experience that, probably estrogen dominance, massive hormone dysregulation, I was always miserable. And I was always struggling either waiting for my period or on my period. So it was about a week of every month where I wasn't dealing with some kind of period symptoms. And then the candida got worse. And it was just, how it is. It's like a snowball effect. It's like the sequelae from one condition impacts another condition. And that's like slow snowballs into bigger and bigger problems. And the tipping point really was in my 30s when I embarked on a very aggressive exercise regime. And I pushed myself over into the beginnings of chronic fatigue syndrome. And then I was partially bedbound for about 9 months to a year after that. I had to give up work. And I really struggled with a whole range of symptoms, but mainly yeast related, menstrual cycle related, very moody, very angry and irritable, weepy all the time, and a lot of fatigue. And then I got partially better because I started to study nutrition and I started to see the links between what I was eating and what I was doing and how it was affecting me internally. And then I got partially better. I was able to go back to full-time work, but underlying was still all these issues. I also developed multiple chemical sensitivity, so I couldn't go into a shop. So for example, there were lots of shops I couldn't go into because of the smells. I couldn't go into a hair salon for about 10 to 15 years because of all the chemicals that they were using in the hair salon. And then I developed quite severe electrical sensitivity. So I couldn't use a mobile phone. I couldn't use a computer. I had to wear a head net if I was being exposed to sort of any kind of EMF frequencies. I really was not in a good shape. However, I was able to conceive. I did have a baby, but the birth and the delivery was extremely traumatic, requiring multiple surgeries. I had multiple hemorrhages and could have died pretty much. And of course, after I was in hospital, they pumped me full of antibiotics for 3 weeks and my baby as well. And that was really hard because I cried every time they put the IV in because I knew that this was going to just be like the icing on the cake. So it was a very hard time. And after I had my son, I did struggle a lot with major anxiety and an inability to sleep. So my nervous system after the birth kind of collapsed. And that was when I was at my kind of lowest ebb with a new baby, moved to a
Yeah,
different country as well. So it was a lot. It was a lot.
Wow. Okay. And then you said you did that liver flush.
Yeah.
So you did your three, nothing happened. You did your one, and you start to see a shift. What was that shift? What did you sort of notice after that one that you did?
I felt, I would say, a measurable, maybe like a 5% difference in my energy levels. And although that might sound very small to anyone I know who's, you know, because obviously I'm sure many of your clients, my clients, will struggle with chronic fatigue. A 5% shift in your energy levels is a significant amount. And so I remember saying to my parents, I feel different. Like, and I was excited. I was excited.
And so then I'm assuming you started committing then to doing
Yes.
more liver flushing. And sort of how did that journey look? How many was it sort of taking? Was it a very everyone you did there was a better shift, or was it, you
No.
know?
So in a way, my current practice has come out of my struggles with liver flushing because, as I'm sure you know, and you know, I'm reading your book at the moment, which is great, by the way.
Oh,
You know,
lovely.
what can happen in these situations is when you have an entrenched gut infection, like Candida, for example, it doesn't stay put, does it? It doesn't stay put in one place. It
Yeah.
starts to migrate. And so what had happened, unbeknownst to me, but I realize it now, was that I had a lot of Candida in my liver and in the liver ducts. And so after that initial run of maybe about three really good liver flushes, I stopped being able to get anything out. And I ended up going through periods where I would do 10 liver flushes and nothing would come out. But my symptoms would get worse because I was getting more and more impaction in the liver. And so all my fatigue, all my sensitivities would come back. And that was I would say, very difficult period. And that lasted, I would say, gosh, three years. And I would have to, 3 or 4 years, and I would have to stop flushing completely and try and do other things. And it was heartbreaking because I knew it was the answer to my problems, but I didn't understand why I couldn't get stones out until I started to realize that it was likely that I had quite a lot of Candida in the liver.
Yeah. Okay. And how many liver flushes have you done to date?
I think I had to check in my diary. I think I've done, hang on, I think I've done, is it two? It is 263.
Which is just amazing. And of course, that's over. Yeah, how many years is this over? Because as you said, there was a stopping and
Yeah,
starting, you know,
yeah.
trying other things.
It's over 8 years. So I started 8 years ago, and I did, I think for 2 years, there was one period of 9 months and another period of 6 months where I stopped because I couldn't make progress. So it's over a long period of time. I started with the very classic once a month. And it's only really in the last 2 to 3 years that I started to do it every 2 weeks and then every week.
Yeah. And I think looking at your Instagram, you kind of adapted. I don't know, did you start with maybe like the Andreas Moritz protocol? Is that the one you
Yeah.
found? And then
Yeah.
you've just kind of adjusted that
Yes.
over, you know, getting to know your body, seeing what works for you, learning more about the liver.
Yeah.
And so when we say liver flush, I guess it's not really what people are thinking when they're watching this, which is more of a quite involved 6 day-ish process. I guess you may like you've shortened that down, and it's not as yeah, because it can be pretty tough, and especially as well actually if what I think I want to highlight is you didn't need to do these 260 to get your health back. This is you've discovered this is an integral tool for good health.
Mm.
We are always exposed to toxins, like
Yeah.
you know, and all the other things that it's really important to look after our liver. So realistically, where would you say the kind of turning point was in doing the liver flushing? I know it's probably hard to remember, like to give an exact number, but was it around 10, 20, more 100? Like when did the really big sort of turning point come where you were like, do you know what, I actually feel good?
Yeah. Well, it's possibly not a simple, straightforward answer. So I would say that I did initially maybe I started to see more advanced benefits relatively quickly. So perhaps around flush 15, I think I started to notice that my chemical sensitivities were much improved. Flush 30, I think I was able to scooter up a hill with my son. Flush 66, I do remember these quite well. Flush 64, 66, I stopped craving sugar, and that has stayed with me ever after, which has been wonderful. As anyone struggling with Candida knows, the sugar cravings can be horrific sometimes.
Mhm.
So I stopped wanting to binge or to kind of crave sugar around flush 66. Flush 80 something, I stopped needing to nap in the day. So you can see that this is actually quite a slow process. It wasn't quick for me. And I do sort of say to clients sometimes that the longer you've been sick and the older you are, sometimes it's a slower process. I think when I often see young men who heal very quickly, women I tend to see are a bit slower. And if you've got like added age and you've been sick for a really long time, then it can be slower still. And one interesting thing is, I think had I stopped, I don't know, say around, let's pick an arbitrary number. Had I got to say flush 80 and kind of thought, oh, well, this is an excessive amount, you know, I don't need to do them anymore. I can just, you know, either go to maintenance or, you know, I can stop here. What happened around flush, I don't know, 80 something or 100 something is I finally started to see the Candida leave, which when you consider how many I'd done already, you would have think it would have already started to happen. But then I started to release Candida in significant amounts. And I would say that I am still seeing significant amounts of Candida leaving. And so for me, I'm still getting additional benefits and still making progress in all areas of my health, even now.
And now, do you have any symptoms? Is there anything still niggling there, or are you pretty much now you're just, you know, going from good health to like vibrant health, let's say?
I would say my health in all areas is about 75 to 80% improved. But yes, I am still dealing with a few issues, but they're manageable. You know, they're not like, it's hard to describe. I know they're there, and that, you know, when I can feel when I get congested, and I'm still expelling Candida. So there's still that issue there. And one thing I have noticed is that when you are about to start healing a particular symptom, or when something is coming up to the surface, it tends to get more aggressive. So, you know, I do still occasionally get flare-ups of yeast type symptoms just before a flush. And it's like you're stirring it up from whichever, because you know, we know, don't we, that parasites like to hibernate. You know, they like their safe place. And once you start changing the terrain and changing the conditions for them, they can actually get more aggressive or peak in terms of their symptomology just before you start to eliminate. And I never understood this. I used to think, why is this symptom getting worse? And I learned eventually, actually, what's happening is your body is pushing this up to the surface. It's ready to be released. It's ready to be cleansed. And then it would go, I'd do a flush, and eventually that symptom would just resolve. But sometimes things get more aggressive just before they're going to change, or they're going to leave or resolve in some way.
Yeah, that happens that's really so common. And I think it's good for people to know that, because they do get scared, and some people can then think what I'm doing is wrong. My body doesn't like that, because they think healing should be, I guess they don't think it'd be entirely comfortable, but they maybe don't appreciate that it can be very challenging along the way. Obviously, the idea is to try and minimize that
Yeah.
through different supports. But sometimes there is just that discomfort that you do have to work through, and the
Yeah.
body will, you know, go through retracing and identify these things it hasn't been able to before, and you're giving it, you know, that opportunity to do so. And that kind of is part of the journey.
Yeah.
It's not just all the fun and games of
No.
just lost, I've got this worm here. Like, you know,
Yeah.
especially with when you're about to pass a parasite, a lot of my clients will say they'll like wake up in the night, have a hot flush, and like sweating. They feel really like just hot and uncomfortable, and they'll have a pain, you know, like a stomach pain, and they're like, oh, I just don't feel good. And it kind of reaches that peak of where you sort of get a little bit worried, like, well, you know, why am I feeling like this? Rush to the toilet urgently, and then there's the worm, there's the parasite. Yeah, it's kind of is how it's just
Yeah.
that build up, that body, like,
Yeah.
and we're out. And
Yes.
so, you know, there's always that famous sort of graph, isn't there, about the healing journey not being linear. And it's very much like, you know, you
Yeah.
think you're doing really well, oh, I'm getting better and better, and then suddenly you're
Yeah.
plummeting,
Yeah.
thinking, why is everything going wrong? But then actually, that once you get over that hurdle, it's kind of, you know,
Yeah.
it's all good again.
Yeah.
But ultimately, it is a very up and down looking,
Yeah.
turbulent.
I always say that instead of healing being linear, often it's like a spiral. And
Yeah.
you tend to kind of you'll be working within and around a symptom for a while, and sometimes it will sort of feel like a spiral, and actually you're going back into a symptom. You have to work through that symptom, and you have to support the body to help resolve that symptom, and then you start going up again, and then it can feel like you're going backwards again, but actually all you're doing is your body's going, right, well, I want to work on this now, and you have to support your body to be able to do that.
Well, that's it. It's trying to see these symptoms that we get as signals, as these messages. And I think we're kind of taught to fear any symptom. It's like, you know, oh my God, I need to, you know, I've got some pain, I need some paracetamol. Like, it's so ingrained in us to suppress these things. Like, if my body's not feeling good, that bad, I need to stop that immediately.
Yeah.
Rather than, you know, trying to go a bit intuitively, like, why is this happening? What is that trying to tell me? Let me support that rather than suppress that. And it's almost a bit backwards from what our, you know, it should be natural for us to want to do that, but because of years of programming and all these other things, it's kind of the opposite now. We're kind of like, need to stop this symptom, this can't be a good thing. Well, you know, that is kind of how the body works. And I think something else from what you said I was going to touch on, with how long these things can take, I think we maybe also don't appreciate that, you know, we can get this toxicity, parasites, candida from our parents. You know, that's how our microbiome starts. And so if we do have parents that have health issues, they might not have at the time, but they do now, you can kind of see, well, things have been going on for them under the surface for some time. And that's kind of how we would have started out. Then was we breastfed or bottle fed? You know, was we giving Calpol when we were ill? How was we fed? You know, all these things. So it's not just looking at what we did in the last few years kind of thing. This can be starting, generationally. This can be impacting us. And it is kind of us now that are really having that chronic illness rate explode from kind of, you know, what's been going on before us.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. And I think if I could sort of communicate, you know, one thing to sort of people is that, you know, you've got to try to look after your gut from, you know, as soon as you get the knowledge, really, and to try and, you know, understand how many ways from birth we are medicated to change the beautiful structure of that microbiome. And I think everything kind of stems from that. And it's amazing to see mainstream medicine, to a certain extent, starting to catch up with this now, because, you know, I've been saying it for years, I'm sure you have too. And it's great to kind of see more of it on the map. But yeah, I do think that successive generations, and for me, the big red flag is antibiotics. I think it's been absolutely key to the entire generational kind of decline in microbiome health, and that's kind of where everything starts. But anyway, that's probably a conversation for another day, but I'm with you.
You know,
it's
the over prescription, isn't it? It's like, you know, in some cases, yes, we do need that, but it just seems to be a case of you go in with something, oh, you might need antibiotics, here you go, and then we get an antibiotic resistant, you know, bacterias and all sorts of problems that come from that, because we're only kind of looking, you know, you got this situation, let's mask it, and we never sort of look at that long-term effect. And so then we get more resistant bacteria, which are then causing us lots more problems, which we can't then just go and mask. We're going to have to do the work, have a really robust terrain, so that we're not going to then, you know, when we have one of these bacterias, be that susceptible, because ultimately it's all about the terrain, you know. I mean, that's what we need to be putting at the forefront of our minds. So yeah, like you say, sort of chat for another time, because that's such a big piece to it. I guess what I'm curious to know is what, going through all of this, going through your health journey, your studies, now helping people where you're at, the number of liver flushes you've done, which is so commendable. What is kind of your advice for anyone on this journey? You know, they're just starting out.
Mm.
Maybe they've done, you know, they've got a couple of flushes under their belt, and I kind of do say to people, look, you're not going to be one and done. Like, that's just not going to happen. It's it's kind of exposing you to practice, learning how to do it, and I do give them a ballpark of like 8 to 10. But I do say that's an average person. So if you've got health issues, it's probably up from there. But just to sort of, like you say, you don't want to be like, you need to do 200, because most people won't be needing to do that amount, but it's also not going to be one. So I do try and, set a bit of their mindset on, this is going to be a bit of a commitment to it. But what advice would you kind of give someone that's just starting out on that journey?
So I'd say if you're just starting out, then the Andreas Moritz method is great to start out with. If people do find that they don't get significant releases, or perhaps they're hitting feelings of congestion afterwards, then the biggest piece of advice I can give is that understanding how to manage bile flow in between flushes is one of the most important things. And there's lots of kind of ways that you can do that. You can use soluble fiber, you can use herbs and things that support bile flow. But that's a major piece of the puzzle, because a lot of the time people can flush, and sometimes after a flush they might feel great, but sometimes their body then starts to clean house, and that can be uncomfortable, and it can throw up some strange reactions. So I think understanding that and knowing how to support one's bile flow daily is really key, because I don't think I understood that for a long time. I think I just thought, oh, well, you flush and then you feel good and then you just go about your daily business, which, to extent, yes, you should be doing that. But I think having the mindset of how to support your liver on a daily basis is really important. And bile is the thing that your liver is missing. And that's why you've got a lot of congestion or stones or sludge or whatever in the liver, is because your bile, your production of bile acids is not adequate, or it's sluggish. And so kind of understanding how to facilitate that, I think, is really important. And also just knowing that your body is always, like you say, your body's always trying to work for you, not against you. So if symptoms do come up, it's just being present and thinking, how can I facilitate movement for this symptom out of the body? Whether that's using diet, whether that's using bile flow agents, whether that's using binders, whether it's using teas, whether that's using enemas, it's how do we facilitate movement all the time to allow our bodies to get rid of what they're trying to, communicate to us they need to get rid of.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what you said there as well about trying to bring in things daily, because I do think with detox, the mindset can kind of be, you live how you like, but you do certain things well, but you think, oh, well, I'll just go and do a detox, clear everything out.
Yeah.
And it almost gives you that excuse to kind of then, do a few things here that's not great, because I'll then just go and do another
Yeah.
detox. And actually, like you say, it's actually those daily things, because anything that's consistent, the more we can do it regularly and consistently and like build into being a habit and habits, that are where the big changes come. It's not from just doing this one flush or one detox protocol. It's like they are great as part of your toolkit and as part of this holistic approach. But yeah, I think you just touched on that there when you said, if you can be supporting bile flow daily and anything really that's supporting health daily, that's what needs to be a lifestyle change. It can't just be something where you come and do these modalities thinking that I'll do that once a year and I'll keep on board with things, because that's just not the world we live in. That's just not the position we're in generationally now, from we said about it being passed down. We do unfortunately have to do a lot of work. The work is lying with us, and if it doesn't lie with us and we don't take responsibility, it will lie with our children and they'll have to do it. So the more work we can do now, obviously before having children, the better it's going to be for them, especially the world they're coming into. So yeah, it's these like daily habit stacks that we can do, but obviously utilizing things like flushes to sort of make some bigger shifts. I mean,
Yes.
daily, bigger shifts.
Yes.
Such a powerful combination.
Yeah.
You kind of did answer this. My next question was going to be about your top tip for liver health. I don't know if you kind of have something separate to what you've already said.
Yeah. Well, my top tip for liver health. So one of the things that I do in my practice is to implement a morning routine. And actually a lot of elements of the Andreas Moritz method can be used in a mini way to facilitate bile flow in between flushes. So for example, you can take a teaspoon of Epsom salts in the morning, and that just allows some stagnant bile that builds up overnight to pass. And people can often sort of do part of this morning routine and they can wake up feeling quite sluggish and sort of stagnant, I guess. And then they do the morning routine and actually then they can feel good for the rest of the day. So, even something small like taking a teaspoon of Epsom salts. Another thing I'm a fan of is Chancre-Piedra, the ground leaf. So for years I tried the Chancre-Piedra tincture, never noticed any great benefits from it. I switched to Chancre-Piedra powder, and I put a teaspoon of that in some green tea, and it's amazingly effective for just helping kind of squeeze the gallbladder and just release some of that stagnation. So just like little tips like that you can build into your daily routine can be super helpful and can make the difference between feeling stagnant and congested and then actually feeling that flow.
Yeah, especially because overnight we go through, we detox different organs, don't we, for different hours.
Yeah.
And so when we wake up, this is just what I teach my clients, that, when you have your first morning wee, it's always dark, smelly, it's that toxicity leaving from all that work you've done overnight.
Yeah.
And so that is the perfect time really to be implementing anything like that in the morning, help your body. If you're waking up really fatigued and drowsy, it's probably because of that toxicity.
Yeah.
And so some of the literally it's so funny because it's the same. I say morning routine and we have like a morning cocktail. So we might make, put a few herbs in there, some lemon, apple cider vinegar, something like an alkalizing drink.
Yeah.
I know they're acidic, but they're alkalizing in the body with some herbs, binder, just because it's just easy then to remember. You sort of get up, the first thing you do, you should hydrate when you first wake. So it's like, okay, well now let's bring in some like daily medicine as such whilst you hydrate. It's kind of like a double tick and ties in quite nicely with the fact that you've detoxed overnight. So they're great tips. Yeah, I'm a big believer about the whole morning routine. And you set your day off right. So then, if you start well, you don't then want to go and have, I don't know, like some chocolate, as a midday snack because you've just done so well all morning.
Yeah. And it can just make the difference, I think, as you say, between sort of feeling like you can't wake up or you can't get started to actually feeling a bit brighter. Sometimes the ingredients make you have a nice big bowel movement. That can always, of course, has a knock-on effect on your cognition. So just anything like that, I think that can just make you feel like you're just dumping some toxicity that's built up overnight and allows you to just feel fresher, brighter, and more motivated for the day ahead.
Yeah. Bringing detox into your daily life. I think this is like a key message, which I like.
Definitely. Yeah.
Because I'm doing all the the Detox Academy is like, these are the big protocols, the big shifts, but it's not so much touching on. Let's just bring these little tiny bits in, which although, like I've said, not big shifts, but if every day you're doing this.
Yeah. And I think that's many people struggle with that, don't they? Because for us, probably having done it for years, it's now just like you don't even have to think about it. You're just on autopilot. Yeah. But for a lot of people, it's struggling, I guess, how to think about, well, what do I do when I'm not doing those, making those big shifts? What can I do on a day? And a lot of the time I find my clients really appreciate having it like really like a timetable so they know what to take when, and they like that because it's just until you've got that mindset, until it becomes part of your life, you've kind of got to, you've got to think, oh, what do I do now? Or what do I take now? And then eventually just becomes you're on autopilot. Then it just becomes part of your
they
natural.
say around 21 days, they say, don't they, to form a new habit. Repetition.
That's right.
Yeah. So make it easy for yourself in that first month, and then just be consistent, just sticking to that. I'm really lucky because my partner, if I learn something new and I'm like, right, we're going to be doing this now, and these are all the benefits, and he's quite like-minded. It's great.
That's
But he he will stick to it. Like, he'll hold me
That's
accountable,
amazing.
with the morning cocktail. If one morning it's not there, I'm woken up.
Where's my
Where's
where's
my
my morning cocktail? That's really funny.
I know, and I'm thinking, oh, can't have a morning off.
Yeah,
But he's a creature of habit, and if he knows something's good,
yeah.
obviously he's gonna want that every day. And it's so those few days where I might forget, I've got him there
That's
reminding
great.
me.
That's great.
Yeah, exactly.
My other half has finally understood, like latched onto the whole chanker thing now. So he has his chanker and his green tea and like cuddles the dog. And if he doesn't have it now, he's like, I need my chanker to, get started.
Oh,
So
that's great.
yeah,
Seeing the effects. Well,
yeah.
that's it. We lead by example at first, and then like, what are you doing? Maybe there is
What's,
something true to what you're saying.
what's this weird stuff you want me to take now?
Yeah, yeah, I know. Yeah, it's when I'm like dicing up garlic, and I'm like, yeah, just have that on a spoon. He's like, what? And then when I do garlic cloves as suppositories, that's when he's a bit like, okay, no,
Oh
that's a
my,
step too far.
does he take them as will he do
He does
that?
everything. He does everything.
No way. Gosh,
I
my
know.
heart's not quite on that level. Kudos to your husband.
It's taken years. It's taken a long time, and I think the best thing we can do is just be that example.
Yeah.
And then suddenly they're thinking, well, hang on, why are you so happy today? Why are you for
Yes.
the thing? I want some of that.
It's the biggest motivator, I think, when those around you, like both my brothers flush because they've had all the same problems that I've had. And they saw how I was and they were like, okay, well, maybe there is something to this. And then they've started flushing. So they do it now. It's
And
amazing.
this is how we get that big change in the world.
Yes,
This
absolutely.
is it. It starts with us.
That's right.
It. Love it. I just love that I found a fellow liver flushing lover. That's great. So, just want to end with where people can find you. Where can I know you're on Instagram predominantly. What's
Yes.
your handle?
So my handle on Instagram is at Naturally Wells.
I will link it below the video. Be easier, isn't
Yeah,
it?
Naturally Wells, and yeah, I've had like a website in development for ages, and just struggling to finalize it. But yeah, eventually there will be a naturallywells.com website, but it's just not quite ready yet. And I'm also on Telegram. So yeah, but Instagram mainly.
Okay. I'm assuming everything will be linked on your bio on Instagram if they want to sort of
Yes.
find further things.
Yes, yeah, I have a list of a list of my kind of blurbs and programs and stuff all on my link tree on Instagram.
Right, so I'll link that below the video. So if anyone wants to
Fantastic.
reach out,
Thank
you
you.
click the link below. Thank you so much for your time. Really, really inspiring and really
Thank you.
encouraging for people that are early on in their journey thinking, is this worth it? Absolutely,
Yeah,
100% it is. So
absolutely is.
living proof
Yes.
here, guys.
Thank you, Jade. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.